be able to follow everything that is happening here. So my name is Lena Karlsson. I'm the director of the Child Protection Initiative within Save the Children. And during this skill building session, we will talk about working with children and young people for gender equality by preventing violence and transforming masculinities. And what we know that already at the age of 3, girls and boys are aware of the gender and how they're expected to behave according to traditional gender roles. 6 out of 10 children globally experience violence, disciplinary practices. And corporal punishment is very often used to make children conform to traditional gender roles. A girl who behaves like a boy is likely to get a slap, and the same with a boy who cries. And I would say that no forms of violence is gender neutral. And we also know that the forms of violence that affects girls and boys are slightly different, but some forms are also common for both of them. We know that female fetuses are at risk of being aborted in many parts of the world. And FGM, early marriage, sexual violence, and exploitation is something that girls are more likely to experience than boys. And of course, sexual abuse also happens to boys, but girls are usually most at risk. Girls are also more at risk to end up working as domestic workers. If we then look at boys in general are more at risk of harmful child work, especially outside the domestic sphere. Boys are also more likely to work in the street, be recruited into armed forces and gangs, be involved in gang violence. Boys are more at risk to end up in the juvenile justice systems and are also more at risk of homicide and suicide. So gender-based violence really have various forms of dimension. And we also know that gay and lesbian and transgender youth are more at risk than other children of being bullied and to be affected in different ways by discrimination, cyberbullying by other children, discrimination by adults. We also see that violence is increasingly facilitated through communication technologies such as mobile phones, etc., which we also heard this morning. But of course, technologies can also be used to promote safety and provide children information about safety. And what we also know is that girls who witness domestic violence, who see their mothers being beaten, are more at risk of ending up in violent relationship, and boys are more at risk of becoming violent themselves, which does not, of course, mean that all boys who witness domestic violence will be violent. And during this session, we will listen to effective ways of preventing violence by working with men and boys, and we will really like to look at it from a life cycle approach. And today we will start with a presentation by Dickens, who sits over there, Dicken Oyamuge, who is a project specialist working for Save the Children in Uganda. And he will present how to mentor young fathers to reduce family violence. And after that, we will move to Brazil, and we will listen to Vanessa Fonseca, who is a senior trainer specialist and program coordinator working from Pomundo. And she will talk about how working with boys and young men for gender equality and stopping gang violence in Latin America is done through her organization, Promundo. And thereafter, we will move again to Asia, and we have 2 young people who will share their experience on how they work to stop gender-based violence, and also how being involved and engaged have also affected their own lives. And both the boys are associated with Save the Children. And after that, we will look at scaling up. How can we really take the work into scale? So we will have Leila Sharafi from UNFPA and Anne de Marte, who is working from one of UNFPA's partner organizations. And they will talk about working with adolescent boys and men. And they will have a specific focus on sustainability and how can we promote innovative examples of engaging boys and men. And finally, we were supposed to have Ravi Karkare here from the UN Millennium Campaign, but unfortunately he is stuck in Mumbai, so I don't think he will be able to make it. But the idea was to end up with a little bit about how can we really make sure that working with men and boys is part of the post-2015 agenda. So since we have a lot of speakers here today, I would like each of them to give their presentation, and then we will have some time for questions and interaction. So over to you, Uyambu, to start. Yeah, maybe I think it's easier, then you can change the slides. Yeah.
Slide 1. Morning, friends. Dickens Sojamuge is my name, and I work with Save the Children, and I'm based in Uganda. I will make a presentation of our experience of working with young men to reduce violence in families. Maybe before I start, I should be able to say that we are working in a rural setting in northern Uganda. We are working in a community that is recovering from war. It had a war for 25 years. So the young people that I'm talking about were born in the camps. They are only able to see the real normal village life about 3-5 years ago when they got out of the camp. We're also working in a community that is at the border between southern Sudan and Uganda. Some of the villages two villages lie along the border. So that is just to give you the context of the communities we work with. And the main goal of our project is really to engage young people to have better relationships with their wives, such that they can tone down gender-based violence, but also to use positive discipline ways for disciplining their children for better health. So that is the overall view of the project. This project is kind of research-based. We are implementing this project jointly with Institute for Reproductive Health, Georgetown University, and then the funding is from USAID. And it's a research, based kind of project, evidence-based project. And when we started the project, we had two things in mind. One, we wanted to test the acceptability and feasibility and effectiveness of a mentoring program to build positive parenting practices and relationship skills among young fathers and their wives, towards their wives and their children. So a mentoring program using community-owned resource persons. The other thing that we wanted to test is a community message board. That is why, this room has been infested today with so many posters. We wanted to test a community message board series to reinforce fathers' new practices and to catalyze new norms around fatherhood and to enable them continue reflecting. I will talk about these posters. They hang in the community, but also they use in what we call group discussions. Let me just give you a kind of a picture in terms of the experimental design for this project. We call it experimental design, but I call it the program design. One, we have got 500 young fathers enrolled in this project, and they are between the ages of 16, 17 to 24, 25 years. That is the age when parenting practices, if somebody is already a parent, he is new in the parenting arena. It's easy to, to talk and influence his way of doing things. And these young fathers were randomly put in control, 250 in control, and then 250 in study. Then after that, we did an inception study, a baseline study. I will share with you the quick results from the study. Then the mentoring session started, and the mentoring session runs for a period of 6 to 7 months, and the mentor is able to meet with the young father once a month, but also to have a group session with the young fathers. 2-3 mentors come together with their young fathers for a group session also once a month. So it's an interaction of about 2 hours and a few minutes in a month. And then, of course, within the community, the posters are running systematically. As you can see, poster number 1 runs in the first month, poster number 2 in the second month. They keep on hanging in the community. The mentors hang them in the community. But they also have a hand poster, which they use for group discussion. Then after that, we did an inline study. We have partially collected data from 340 young fathers. 160 is remaining. We are busy collecting it now. After we have got feedback from the inline study, then we shall refine the intervention and then possibly take it to another level. Now, these are the results from the baseline study that we did. As you can see on your left-hand hand are the practices. What we found out is that 30% of the young fathers whom we interacted with had perpetuated at that time intimate partner violence in the past 3 months, 30% of them. 50% of them perpetuated physical violence to a child in the past 3 months, okay? And then we also realized that 84.5% experienced or were threatened with violence in their fatherhood. And that explains why 30 and 50%, which are actually quite worrying, are there, because these guys had exposure to violence in their childhood. The attitude towards violence, when we spoke to these young people, we found that 66% of them thought physical punishment is a good way of disciplining a child. Because I know a majority of them were disciplined in the same way. They do not know any other way of disciplining the child. They think that is the best. 68% think that wives have no right to disagree about parenting. They should just keep quiet, okay? And 50% of them, said it was hard to raise a child without physical punishment. 68% of them did not have confidence of handling a child without physical punishment. This was quite a worrying takeoff point. However, when we turned back to these young people after the mentoring, the 6-7 months, when we turned back to these young people, this is the preliminary inline findings that we got. We realized that there was a big difference between the control group and the study group. And what we found is that there was significant decrease in men reporting intimate violence, for example, shouting, pushing, and shoving the women. But also, we found that more men chose nonviolent methods for resolving conflicts with their wives. Actually, in our program, we introduced with these young people with a lot of excitement what we call a yellow card. A yellow card is a card that a couple uses to send a signal to his or her partner that there's something we need to discuss. Much as we went to the market this morning, in the evening when you come back, you find this card put somewhere on an agreed spot. Now when you find the yellow card, then you start saying, how about the yellow card? Then the discussion starts from there, And there was, I know time is limited, but there was a case of a young woman, every market she would buy 3 nails. And that day she would nail the door with 3 nails because every day the husband would delay in the market enjoying disco and drinking and company of other men. But once the yellow card was brought, she stopped buying the nails and they could now trigger discussion and say, I know you like dancing, but at least come home early. The other thing is improved couple communication, especially discussing about child discipline. Yesterday I was telling Lena that it will be very difficult solely to talk about, ways of handling children without talking about ways, of interaction between the man and his wife. Communication and discussion on how to punish the child is a discussion which is going on among these couples. In fact, the wives say that the men even discipline children better than them now. They are learning from the men, okay? Instead, it is the man who gets now to the wife and say, no, don't shout at the child. The other time, it was the other way around. Child discipline, less use of physical, especially shouting and hitting the children, seems to be going down. I know it is a process, which will take a bit of time and some people can easily backslide. More interaction with children, expression of love, affection, and praise. In one of the testimonies we got from one of the couples, they said, the wife said that my husband is now able to have time and teach the children the names of the trees, the names of the places, and go down on the ground to play with the child, which was not the case before. Because if they are not available, then who teaches their children? They leave it only to the wives. Men, interacted positively with the children, and the father, is seen as a major caretaker. Reduced acceptance of men beating their wives is something that we also found. Alcohol use is still high, unfortunately. If you compare the control and the study, the levels of taking alcohol is the same. But what we realize is that upon the increased visits of the mentor, the level of the frequency of taking alcohol by the young fathers in the study seems to be going down. And objectively, they now, discuss when you should be able to drink alcohol. Some of the challenges: young men are very mobile. Everywhere, anywhere on earth, they are very, very mobile. And for a reason, they are mobile because they are looking for ways of survival. So one of the things we realize is that young men skipping the sessions. A mentor would go there at an appointment time, but he doesn't find a young father at home, so he has to reschedule. That also affected my monitoring and my colleagues' monitoring, because you'd want to monitor the discussion, but the session has been cut. So you drive back to the office, and that's kind of a waste of time. Attrition of the young fathers. Some young fathers dropped out. Some of them crossed to southern Sudan looking for ways of survival, for money, to support the family. Others even relocated to look for land, because after the conflict, there was serious issues to do with ownership of land. So the pressure and continuously demand for livelihood support. Low education among some of the mentors, and then programming between the urban and the rural. We are so much used to programming in the rural area, but I personally now had the experience of working in the urban area. It's easier to find a father in the rural area at home than the father in the urban setup. Effects of alcoholism is still there. We have cases of backsliding, violence, and then the case ends up in police. So in some cases, significant others, other people who matter are an obstacle. We call them significant others, like the mother-in-law, the father-in-law, the brothers-in-law, the cousins-in-law. When they see this young father taking a new parenting behavior style, they begin questioning him, and they think it is the woman who has made him to sit under the veranda, in quotes. Okay. Where are we going? Key priorities for scale-up. This is now our thinking with additional funding we are getting from USAID. We have realized that a parenting program alone, as a standalone, may not be very effective. These demands will continue coming in, at least if there was a livelihood intervention, at least if it was a vocational, so what we have now deciding is that we want to integrate the parenting program on the ongoing programs that are on child development. And luckily now for Save the Children, we have got 3 running programs. One of them is, we call it YIELD. This is imparting skills, employment skills to young people. It's an EU project, and young people have got vocational skills and they are able to generate income. But that income may go to betting. We have got a lot of betting now in Uganda, sports betting. So they should be able to direct it to reinforce and support the family. So we want to integrate it there, go to the platforms where the young fathers are, in the young fathers groups, select the young fathers who meet the criteria and allow them to select the mentors. The young fathers are the ones who select the mentors. The other project is the ECCD project, which is going in a nomadic area in northeastern Uganda, where my friend there, Baron, yesterday was presenting, is working. The nomads have brought their children to the ECCD centers, but the facilitators of the centers do not have control and interventions at home with the fathers. So we thought this is an opportunity of supporting the nomad, with his wife, to be able to really support the child and discipline the child in a positive way, but also in their interpersonal relationship between the nomad man and his wife. And in that community, the nomads are now very redundant because, one, they don't have the cattle. They used to do cattle rustling using guns. They have been disarmed. So they are quite very redundant. And we thought this is an opportunity. The other one, I have 1 minute left. The other one is a project by the Dutch government in post-conflict areas, and they also target young people within the age range that we work. So we thought it would be a good opportunity to integrate. Once those models have been tested, then we can be able to say, fine, you can pick something that you can take to, and integrate in any other intervention. The other things that we thought that we should take us to scale is strengthening the community. What skills, what approaches do we use for mobilizing the community? The children belong to the community. The children belong to the households, to the families, and to the parents. What skills, what approaches do we use for mobilizing them? The other one that we think is working with gatekeepers for the cultural practices and values is very, very important. When you talk about the community, you're talking about cultural practices and you're talking about cultural leaders and then the local leaders. Working with the local governments, I called it local government, but yesterday I thought I would change the slide and say national and local government. But because I'm so much used to the district level, that is why I talk about local government. It's very, very important because you want to influence government policies on parenting, for example, on child protection, you want to influence it. Lobby for service delivery. For example, we are now integrating family planning into our curriculum, but you may find that if there are no family planning services, then it's a waste of time. Okay, so we're kind of lobbying for service delivery, health, education, and related for the communities. And then conduct further research. That's why we thought this was important to take it as a research-based approach. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you so much. Thank you. I want to end with this. You can read this. This is what one of the young fathers said. He said, I want my child to appreciate me for what I will have done. I can't say what that is now, but I am trying to build it. And this particular young father is living alone in his home. He has moved from his village and is living alone in his home, and there is nobody giving him guidance. It will only be the mentor to support him. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dickens. This was really inspiring to learn how you work with young fathers to prevent family violence. And I especially like these yellow cards. I think I will practice that at home as well. So now I will leave the floor to Vanessa Fonseca. Would you like maybe to stand here? It's easier with the PowerPoint. Yeah.
So, good morning, everybody. We have 10 minutes to talk about complex issues in English. It's a challenge to me, but I will try. I can say that for us in Promundo, the organization that I represent, we can highlight that to prevent violence among and against children and young men is transform gender norms. I can say that in 2007, our methodologies were classified in a gender transformative approach, as a gender transformative approach to prevent violence and to promote health among men in a continuum like this. So there are like characteristics of programs to prevent violence. So Promundo was classified as a transformative methodologies, Program 8. As Program 8 created with Instituto Papai, Eco, Salão e Gênero, and Promundo is the core of our programs to transform gender norms. This program is basically formed by two components, group education activities and campaign, or a methodology to engage the public to create campaigns. The group education activities promote a reflection about the roots of the violence and try to create alternatives, behaviors, learn it from the examples in the group. Campaigns are created together with the young men to discuss about which aspects in masculinities we have to change and how we can reach or touch the young man. So this is an example of campaign created by young people in Brazil. It was the first campaign, and this model to create a campaign was adapted in a lot of contexts in Rio and in almost 20 countries. So we try to discuss what is a man. So we have three examples of men's more that use more respect and dialogue in their relationships. So you can say that to transform gender norms in your programs is recognize that not all men live in the box. There are a lot of masculinities, and to live in the box results in costs for society, especially for a sense of freedom. You can identify positive attitudes in young men to show alternatives for rigid models. We have to recognize that men is partners capable of playing a positive role in the health and well-being of their partners, families, and communities. We use a holistic model. We name it ecological models, different levels of actions, individuals, communities, institutions. Schools are important space to challenge masculinities. Footballs in communities is also useful strategies for us. But I have to say that this process is not magic. It's important that it's important to emphasize that we need time to deconstruct gender. We need to touch their bodies, to hear individuals' stories, stimulate them thinking about their stories. And now Program 8 is adapted in 20 countries and generate a lot of projects. I think the importance of Program 8 is its adaptable aspects. You use the same process in the adaptations. We usually is invited by an association in the countries, so use the activities, the group education activities of Program 8 to discuss problems, the roots of the violence, and we try to change the activities to be more adaptable in each context. And we created a campaign with the same processes in these countries. Now we have more than 20 countries, but I don't know the number specifically, but I invited you to know our project is in Promundus both. Program 8 is used to engage in adults in violence prevention against children, and we try to prevent physical punishment against children with adults. We try by the time to use the program with children. The results of the conversations with young boys and girls were these books to engage fathers in the education without violence and gender equitable. I forgot this. I wrote down my presentation to be easier to me, but I think it's not easy to try to read and talk about. My English is not good, so to be very disciplined, I try to do this, but sorry. So this book were the results of the conversations of the group education activities with children. We create the stories with a participative methodology of children, trying to thinking about their fathers and mothers could raise them without violence. What are the alternatives for the punishment against children? The first one was Wind in the Face, I think. Wind in the Face is a boy's story. It's a story of a boy that lives in Africa that want to feel the wind in the face, and they try to pular, saltar da cachoeira.
He wants to jump into the waterfall.
Yeah. And they created a balanço. Yeah, as alternative to it. So the children were showing us how the fathers and mothers can hear them and find alternatives for their lives. And Kicking Stones, the book with young girls, was created to thinking about we can raising girls with more gender equitable. So, thank you.
Oh, sorry. You want to?
No.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Your English is brilliant. We were really able to follow everything. And this was very interesting to hear Promundo's program on working through a gender transformative approach to challenge gender norms. And I also really like the booklets that you showed in the end and how you involve children in developing material for parents on child development and against gender discrimination. So now we will move continent, and we will come to India and to our host country, India, to Asia, and to our host country, India. So we will hear from Amarendra Kumari from Bihar in India, and he will speak about the Allies for Change project.